Is everybody in now, Michelle?
Yeah, everyone's in.
Great. Okay, we'll start with. Okay, thank you so much. I just want to start by saying we have a great friend of the network joining us tonight called Deirdre Nelson. Deirdre came to Cork in 2011 to do a fantastic show in the series called Contemporary Souvenir. And I have a feeling, Deirdre, am I right in saying that you were with us probably about 2 years before that at one of our conferences?
Yes, yeah.
I was trying to work that out tonight.
Yeah, I would actually, I'm trying to work it out because I know I was at Sirius 2 years in a row, sort of two months over 2 years, if you know what I mean, March every, for 2 years. So, and I think was the conference maybe in the middle of that or something? I can't remember.
Was at the start. And then following that, then you came back and you did some community work and came back again, which is amazing. So Deirdre could give us a talk every night for the next 365 nights, because she has a body and wealth of work that I have that surpasses so many people. And Deirdre is one of the most unusual people in that she actually lives by textiles. It's a very rare thing. And congratulations, Deirdre, for managing to do that, because my God, it's a challenge. And I can't wait just to say a little bit about you, if it's okay to say this. I love the way you combine cultures and you combine local lore and you combine music and textiles, and there's no end. Deirdre's mind is so open to the multidisciplinary approach. It provides a very varied and fantastic body of work as a result. And she has, what I love, Deirdre, is your love of knitting. I know you love lots of things, you love everything, but knitting is one of the special aspects of your practice. So I hope you might touch on that tonight sometime, but don't worry if you don't. You have so much to talk about. But you take on ecology and endangered species, and you collaborate with many other artists as well in tackling those difficult subjects. So I'll leave it open to yourself, Deirdre, and thank you for coming tonight. I'm just so thrilled to have an old friend back. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thanks very much for that welcome. That's amazing. It's fantastic to be back, and I had such a good time in Cork and was welcomed so amazingly by the Cork Textiles network, and it really helped and fed into my work, to be able to be part of that network while I was there. I'll just share my screen now. Okay, so I thought I would just start off by introducing myself, really, and my sort of background or way into the sort of work that I do now, and I've sort of created this little journey of my sort of from design education I went to Glasgow School of Art and I studied textiles there, and then from that I've sort of had this. It's not been a very direct path. It's been a bit of a, like all of us, probably a bit of a wavy path through lots of different ways of working. But I think what it's done is added up to, I suppose, the sort of work and fed into the sort of work that I do today. So I did studied embroidered woven textiles at art school, and then straight after art school, sometimes it's quite hard to get yourself going again and to try and think about finding work, and as Carmel said about finding work within textiles. So I did a lot of work within facilitation, I suppose, doing arts and textile workshops within a project called Art in Hospital. And it was mainly working with elderly people, and so a lot of people that had dementia and strokes, and we did a lot of textile workshops, but also art, drawing and painting, different crafts as well. And from that sort of gave me confidence and experience to go out and do a lot of work within the community. So again, it was very much facilitation, running workshops, and I had, I'm sure like quite a few of us have had like weeks where one day I was working with people with learning difficulties, the next day I was working in a primary school, the next day I was working with older people, and trying to maintain a practice in amongst all of that, I think is, as we all know, is really, really hard. And then I went back to art school and did a sort of more of a research-based course. It was a master, well, called a master's in philosophy. And that was, I wrote about, basically my thesis was writing about artists working in healthcare. And it was a very practical approach to doing a master's. You know, it was very much about what happens when you leave art school and then you're thrown into working with, I suppose, quite vulnerable people, and having to think of ways that you can use your experience from art school, but also gain new experiences and support from people within, you know, a healthcare profession. And then I also went on and worked at a place called the Visual Arts Studio, and it was a portfolio preparation course for students. So, and I know Carmel said I've managed to survive as a textile artist. There was a lot of sort of, I suppose, background, I suppose, working out in the community before I was able to maintain more of a practice by myself. So, but working with students within a portfolio course actually has really fed it. I've realized more and more has really fed into my work, because, I was having to teach students that were maybe going to study sculpture or filmmaking or architecture or product design. So it gave me sort of, I suppose, a wide range of skills. And I also had the opportunity to work within art schools, which again really has fed into my practice. And then the year 2000, I think I must have given myself a talking to and said, right, it's time to, get on with creating more of your own work or creating more of an arts practice, rather than from graduating, I had put art in, artworks, textile works into the odd exhibition, but nothing that was sort of cohesive. So in the year 2000, I managed to be in a group exhibition, and then I got some funding off the back of that to develop some work. And then I suppose things really took off from there. So I started doing a lot of exhibition work and had a few solo exhibitions, a few joint exhibitions. And because I had, by that stage, I'd given up my work teaching, because I'd decided that I was going to give it a go and try and, do some work without, obviously, like, you always need things that are going to bring in the money. So, I would take opportunities as they came, but I gave up more sort of formal teaching at that point and began to sort of really work at creating a body of work. And because I'd given up my teaching work, it sort of opened me up for other opportunities to do artist residencies, or, like going to Cork, going to Cove, to Serious Arts Centre. It sort of opened up time that I could actually give to something like, going away to another place for 2 months or 3 months or a month or whatever. So did a lot of residencies, but also doing artist residencies, often, you're expected to do some element of community, working alongside a community or working with a community to develop work for exhibition. So having the experience of working within communities from graduating, that has really, really fed into the sort of work that, that I do. But at the minute, I suppose I'm, I always think it's a bit of a juggling act, and I know it's probably the same for all of us, that you're sort of, people ask you what you do, you're not quite sure what you do. So I suppose now, I do work as an artist, and I exhibit work, and sometimes I work to commission. I've done some commissions within healthcare, and, that's very much working as a designer. And then I also still do facilitate workshops, and at the moment I just as Carmel says, I survive as a textile artist. I'm actually gone back and I'm teaching in the art school at the minute, a few days a week, just temporarily for a year, within a product design and innovation course, which is a whole other challenge, but really interesting at the same time. So I was trying to pull out sort of projects, and I just thought what I would do is maybe pull out sort of more recent projects. And obviously, if there's certain projects that you want to know more about, you can get in contact, or, have a look at my website and things. So, but I thought I'd start off by talking about an Ireland-based project, a residency, and it's the last residency really that I did before COVID, and things have changed slightly. And, I'm actually, a lot of the work I've been doing recently is more local based, which is something I haven't had for a long time. I spent a lot of years traveling about and had amazing opportunities doing artist residencies in different places. So Some of the work that I'm going to show you is more recent, and it's very local to my area. But I thought I'd start by this project, which is in Manorhamilton, and I don't know if you know Manorhamilton in County Leitrim. It's actually very close to where my dad was originally from. So I saw this opportunity through Leitrim Sculpture Centre, and they run artist residencies. So, you know, if any of you are interested, keep an eye out for, they normally run residencies each year. And they have like accommodation there, but you also work towards an exhibition within a gallery. And I had been working on projects based on the idea of, I'd done it in another area, 2 areas actually, based on the theme of Made In. So it's very much a community residency where it's about celebrating what's made locally, and not so much only craft work or established artists, but just in general things that are made. And I suppose it's about celebrating a place and all that's been made within a place. So Manorhamilton is probably like, you know, a lot of different places in Ireland that, you know, there's amazingly colourful streets. So one of the first things I did was I did a colour, I suppose it was like a colour code of all the streets within the town in Manorhamilton, and I'm sure you could do the same in Cove or parts of Cork as well. And it became this sort of like, I suppose, you know, the first thing I looked at in terms of Made In was the way people actually coloured their houses, and it was, you know, it was very much about, you know, the building's identity, and also colour in relation to the building side by side. And I did this with sort of every street within the Manorhamilton's quite a small place, so with every street within the town. So they became sort of like, I suppose, like stripes of colour that then I developed some of them on into textiles, but, you know, I'll show you, within the gallery, they became digital prints. They were like striped, I suppose, strips they were done in paper. But equally, you know, I've always wanted to develop this work on. And of course, sometimes you finish one project and you go straight into the next and there isn't time to develop it. But it was so interesting to see, you know, the different colours and also the combinations of colour, and how people had, without realising it, had probably worked together to show that colour. So the gallery is really big, and I don't know if any of you have been to Leitrim Sculpture Centre, but it's really big gallery and quite daunting, you know, when you've got to present something. The other thing I looked at was I looked at historically what was made in Manorhamilton, and, you know, there's factories. I looked at contemporary making, and, you know, there's factories making all sorts of things. There's actually quite a lot of manufacturing in a really small town. But, you know, I suppose back in the day, it would have been, you know, like there would have been like cobblers and dressmakers, and, you know, I even found a paper maker, and, you know, it was amazing to see the amount of craft that was within the area. And I don't know if you ever looked at directories, if any of you are interested in social history, but some of the directories of local towns are so interesting. It really gives you a picture of what used to happen within that town, and the sort of, I suppose, the buzz that must have been in, you know, in Manorhamilton's a market town at a sort of crossroads. So people would have come from all over to Manorhamilton for the fair, you know, and they would have had cattle fairs and marts and everything there. So one of the first things I did was, I mean, I suppose they were more like digital works on paper, but I took away all the other sort of from these lists. I took out all the things that weren't about craft or manufacturing, and created these sort of, I suppose, like made in lists for Manorhamilton. And it was so interesting to see what had been made, and I think local people that hadn't realized. I think once you start presenting that information, there was a sort of a real buzz about about it, and a lot of discussion about, you know, what was made then that isn't made now. And there was an amazing button factory, and yeah, so it was just, I think it was really good for, I think the people from the Historic Society were really interested in it, because it's sort of, you know, often people can be really down on these towns, small towns that maybe are, you know, there's not a lot going on anymore, there's not a lot of shops, but, you know, to celebrate those sort of histories is really, really important. The other thing I did was sorry, it's very faint image, but you know, a small image, but I ended up creating a list of everything that was made in the town, like currently. So it was everything from, you know, if somebody made like a great cup of tea, to somebody that could bake a cake, to somebody that made their own Christmas cards, to someone that did knitting or crochet, or you know, people put in humorous things. You know, I just asked people, what do you make? You know, and you know, people talk about making a mess, or you know, there was a lot of sort of humor, and a picture of the community came out through this list, and it was digitally printed onto fabric, like a long strip of fabric, but it was made so that they were all this, like the strip of fabric was the width of a community table, you know, like in a community hall, every community hall has standard tables that are used for events. So basically after the exhibition, the long strip of fabric could be cut up into tablecloth lengths, so they could be used. Like, I was quite keen, I've been more and more keen on trying to make work that can be used again and that has a life beyond the exhibition. So it's not just about a one-off exhibition, but it's about the final, where the work ends up, basically. And then one of the things I discovered in the town was they had like open mic nights, and there was this young guy who was a rapper in Manorhamilton, and he was like actually a really good rapper, and was a guy that was sort of getting into quite a lot of trouble in the town, and obviously had a drink problem and different things. But I'd heard him rap, and then I said, oh, would you be up for rapping the Make Maiden list? So he basically wrote this amazing rap that basically was a rap of all the things that were made in Manorhamilton, and it was fantastic. You know, I think it was brilliant because people saw him in a different light, you know, because they could see his talent, which was normally sort of hidden away, but also a celebration of a small town, and you know what can happen within a small town. And the other thing I did was I made a tablecloth which was based on an old map that sort of showed the crossroads within the market town. And then within the exhibition, there was spools of thread that were across the wall, and basically you could take thread off the spool and you could stitch the tablecloth, but the colors were all, I picked colors that all related to the colors within the town, so they related to the stripes of color and the color of the houses. And then visitors were invited to come and sit around the table and embroider if they wanted, or have discussions about the town, or you know, whatever, or discussions about what they make. So moving on, this is a more local project, and it's also one that is more recent as well. So it was done sort of in the middle of lockdown, and then the exhibition actually happened. It was supposed to happen before lockdown, but of course everything was postponed. And then this happened just after lockdown. And before lockdown, I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but it became even more significant after lockdown, you know, when we were all sort of stuck in one place. But I don't know if you know about an organization called Craft Space. They do amazing exhibitions. They're based in Birmingham, and they wanted to do a project about commoning, and it was about, I suppose, what we have and what we share that is common resources. So people talk about commoning a lot in terms of land, you know, the common land and land that's owned by the people, but also there's a lot of, I suppose, research and sort of discussions about, you know, what projects are commoning, things like, you know, where resources are shared, like, you know, or say something like we have in Glasgow, there's like a swap market where you can go and swap. There's no money exchanges hands, and it's about swapping objects or clothes, or you know, we have like a repair cafe. We have a lot of different and I'm sure it's the same in Cork as well. So things that are about, you know, where people are working together for the common good. And so I decided to look at my local area and actually we were basically working with, there was a group of artists were selected for the exhibition, but then also there was academics were working on it as well. So it was really interesting people that were working within the areas of geography or sociology, and we had amazing conversations with people. And then I decided I wanted to go and try and find out what projects or what aspects of commoning were going on in my local area. And I decided to do it within 2 kilometers of my house. And which at the time I didn't know, you obviously didn't know the pandemic was coming, but then when the pandemic came, it became even more significant. That idea, we all became so much more local and thinking about our local area. So I started to look and try and map out what were projects around the area. So there was everything from, like food projects to a toy library. We have like a tool library really close to where I live, and just began to think about how many of these projects were there, but also how important it was to my community or where I live. And I'm sure if any of you did the same project, you would find lots of things that feed into that area. So I ended up creating a map, and it was like I suppose it was quite an abstract map, but so I decided it would be within 2 kilometers. So the red dot in the middle is where I live, and then the red dots are all the projects that I found. But I started off straight away by looking at where the green spaces were. So the sort of more solid areas there are all the green spaces around where I live. And then, began to think about where these projects were situated within that. So this is just a sort of another image of and it was done with a technique. I'm sure some of you have tried gold work. So there's a sort of couching technique that's done within gold work, because I came up with the idea of maybe creating badges or something that was like celebrating these projects and turning, nearly like a fictional guild, a guild of commoning, or a guild of, celebration of these projects. So I decided I would make a badge for each project. And you can see the technique better there. So it's threads that were laid down and then stitched over the top. And I dyed the threads with natural dyes from the local park. And these are some of the colors that I got from. So it was things like nettle and apple leaves and birch and bramble. I'm trying to think of some of the others, but so I wanted to keep the materials tied in with the, I suppose, some ways try and connect the materials really well with the idea. So, about, I suppose, thinking about the commons and the park and common resources and things that are accessible to all. And I worked with a girl called Julia Billings, who's a really beautiful natural dyer in Glasgow. So she helped me sort of pick up some techniques, and I've been able to, carry on with the work. So what I ended up doing was making badges for each organization, and this was a badge that was actually made for the Sikh temple, which is sort of not that far from where I live in the city. And I decided to color code them. So rather than, originally I thought about maybe embroidering logos or something, but in the end I decided to color code them. So different colors represented different things. So within the Gurdwara in Glasgow, they have basically they give out free food that's open to anybody that needs food every lunchtime. So the white or the very light color at the top represented faith, and then the bottom color, the yellow, represented food. So I was able to sort of code them in ways. So they were just small, about the size of like a brownie badge or something like that. But they were done in the same technique, sort of couched down. And sorry, I'll go back. I don't have an image. I couldn't find an image when I was putting this together of the final. I've lost some images on a hard drive recently, so I'm scrabbling around trying to get all these images back. But in the exhibition, the map was in the center, and then from that were threads, and the threads basically connected. So it nearly looked like I suppose like planets or something, because the original embroidery, the circular embroidery, began to look nearly like a world or a globe or something, but it was a very small world, the world within 2 kilometers from my house. So from that, I had threads that went out to these badges that were around it, sort of nearly like planets that were sort of moving around the side. So it's been in a touring exhibition for about a year, with other work. So if you're interested in having a look, the exhibition was called We Are Commoners, and there's some really interesting craft work. It was all craft artists, and we all took on this theme, but in completely different ways. So it's worth, and there's plenty of resources on the website as well, downloadable things you can do yourself or ways you can explore commoning. So, and then this is a project that actually happened sort of just as we first came out of the first bit of the pandemic. And an organisation in Govan, which is an area of Glasgow, wanted to do a project that celebrated carers and the role that carers played during the pandemic, and also just celebrate carers in general. So I decided, I'd been doing some work just myself during the pandemic on soap, because I was thinking that soap during the pandemic became such a precious commodity. It was like, you know, if you had soap, you could keep your hands clean and you could protect yourself. So I wanted to do something related with that. And I had made a piece of soap with just the word safe across it. I've got a very good friend who's a great mold maker, so she helped me do some molds. But for this project, the idea was that we were gathering carer stories during the pandemic. And often what happens on these community art projects is you're asked to, you know, like, or often you're asking people to contribute all the time. You're asking for their stories or their experience, and often nothing is given back. You know, it's sometimes it's just a one-way, you know, it always feels a little bit to me like you're taking all the time. So I wanted to create something that was maybe about an exchange. So I had this idea that maybe I would make soap, and then in exchange for people's stories, I would get their stories or their, you know, their experiences in exchange. So the friend that I spoke about, she made a silicone mold for me with, you know, with the letters on. And then I sort of, I mean, I was really just, I mean, I'm not a great soap maker. I was buying sort of melt. I don't know if any of you have tried making soap, but melt and pour soap that you just heat up really and you pour in the molds. So I started to make some soap, and also I did some embroideries and knit and into like fabric, and then that was pressed into molds. So I made soaps that had the texture of textiles, you know, some woven, because there was a tradition of weaving in that area, and also the, you know, the one you see here with care, and also the numbers at the side, that was basically embroidered fabric, and then that was pressed into the clay and a mold was made. So the soaps, when you made the soaps in the mold, they had the texture of embroidered text or embroidered words. And the number is 36 billion. That's the amount of unpaid care in Scotland. So I suppose it was quite important to, you know, make some sort of a statement or stand up for some of the carers as well. So I made these soaps, and in the end, I mean, originally they were single units that I thought would be a form of exchange. But when I made a lot of them so I could give them to people. But when I started to look at them, they nearly became like coins. And I remember one of the carers saying, oh, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were paid in soap. And I was thinking just this idea of coins and units and things being, you know, sort of this idea of multiples of things. And I think they were, a lot of the carers were given, a lot of soap companies sort of arrived at hospitals and gave them soap. And in the same way as, I mean, I'm sure it was the same in Ireland, you know, like takeaway companies or restaurants were bringing food to the hospitals, and there was all of this. And, you know, a lot of the nurses and staff I spoke to said they really appreciated it, but they also said, but you know, what we really need is a pay rise, you know. And I mean, I don't know what it's like in Ireland, but I know in Scotland it's you know, that's such a big issue, you know. And even though people really appreciated what people were doing for them, they, you know, at the end of the day, you know, they're getting paid not very much for what they do. So yeah, they became, you know, like, I suppose, like units of currency. So I called it Currency of Care in the end. And we had an exhibition of the work, and I'd worked with a friend who's a writer, and she wrote the most beautiful piece of writing, which a bit of it's on my website with the work if you want to have a look. But so in this space, it was a community centre we exhibited, and her text was written on the mirror, and then soap. There was soap there in the bathroom for people to take away. So it's the first time I've exhibited in a loo, so that was quite exciting. And then I did some embroideries onto masks. I just took the fabric from masks, layered them up, and using some of the words and the things that people said. So I did a series of work that was, you know, words like careworn and stretched, and so they were just very simple. It wasn't about taking long pieces of text that people had said. It was more about just pulling out main words to get the point across. And then, you know, I mentioned in the last project, I've been doing experiments in natural dye. That's been I mean, I had done a little bit before, but I suppose now I just I'm really trying to be more considerate about materials I use, and I just realized how much chemicals are in a dye process in textiles is really harsh on the environment. So I've been trying more and more, but I've done recently went to a course in London, and they're called Ceres Natural Dyes. You'll find them on Instagram, but they do 2 and 3 day courses in screen printing with natural dyes. And it's a really interesting process. So I've had the opportunity to go and do that. And I mean, these are just some of the experiments that I've been doing, but I'm hoping to sort of use that a little bit more in work and maybe get into, I mean, I've done a lot of digital print, but not a lot of screen printing. So, and I had the opportunity to go to Cove Park. It's an artist residency in Scotland, just for a week. But I did quite a lot of. I've been wanting to explore using food waste and using waste rather than actually going out and picking plants specifically to dye. Actually using sort of byproducts of like I mean. The usual onion skins and things like that, but really trying to push food waste to its limits, really, or waste. So I was also involved in an exhibition sort of coming out of the pandemic, which is it was called Resolve: A Creative Approach to the Circular Economy. And in Glasgow, I'm a volunteer at a repair cafe. I don't know if you have one in Cove or Cork, but we meet once a month and we basically help people repair their stuff. And it's like a cafe where people come and they bring stuff that's broken, and there's a team of volunteers. But I wanted to do something about repair for this exhibition. And the exhibition was fantastic. It was a range of different artists producing different work. There was someone who was making sort of modular furniture. Someone else was doing there was a company that actually make things from waste from a beer manufacturers from the grains, and they'd come up with this new product in a sort of bio resin. And so it's a really interesting exhibition to be part of. But I ended up doing embroidered work based on a repair manifesto. There was a manifesto was created in Holland, I think in 2010, and it's a fantastic sort of list of instructions or call to action. So I ended up making a T-shirt, and it was embroidered in natural dyed threads. But I bought the T-shirt on eBay, and it's really funny what you can find on eBay. I just put in holy T-shirt or T-shirt with holes or whatever, and I ended up getting this T-shirt. And I don't know, I mean, I think I spent £4 or something for it, but I don't know who would have bought it otherwise, but it was covered in holes, and I don't know if there were moth holes. I think maybe it was a damage in the fabric or something. But I first of all darned the whole T-shirt, so it was all darned, and then I embroidered the manifesto into the so the repair manifesto part at the top was all darned, and then the rest of it was embroidered with the manifesto. But it became nearly I suppose like a punk T-shirt or something, and it was this sort of idea of like a call to action. So that was part of the exhibition. And then last summer I was involved in a project called Dandelion in Scotland, and there was a big project all over Scotland where they were celebrating growing and food production, and there was lots of projects all over in different areas. And I had the opportunity to go to North Uist, which is in, I don't know if any of you have been there, but it's in the Outer Hebrides, so it's sort of the most western island you can go to, well, apart from St Kilda's a bit further on, but it's sort of the most westerly island. So it's sort of just below Lewis and Harris, where all the the Tweed is made, and it's the most amazing landscape. I mean, I love it. I'd been there quite a few years ago doing a project, but it's when you fly over, it actually looks like there's not enough land for people to live on. There's a lot of so much water, and the light there is amazing. Like if anybody's into painting or color work, it's just amazing, the light, because there's so much water. So we wanted to do a project that was about the connected with growing, and they had this idea that they would have a harvest festival and also some sort of a celebration at the end of it. So we thought about maybe making textiles that could be used for that festival. And again, going back to the natural dye, and I was quite interested in maybe trying to create something that used material, or like that used waste, or that used weeds. And the image before is of it's called a polycrub, and they have them quite a lot in the Outer Hebrides, and they're made of like polycarbonate. And what was happening was people's greenhouses, it's so windy there that they were getting blown away. So there's these fantastic community they're called polycrub. And there's just the most amazing growing spaces. But what had happened there was the lady who was running it had been given soil, but there was mare's tail weeds within the soil. So her poor polycrub was like overgrown with this. So I said, oh, well, I could see if I can get some natural color from it. So I started dyeing with weeds. And this is silk that's been dyed with the mare's tail. And then I created a range of dyed threads that would be used on the project, and they were based on just food waste and food. And I'd used, for those of you who've done natural dyeing before, you probably know about this, but used different modifiers. So I was able to create different shades of color so they became like as was a palette of embroidery thread that we could work with. And I did some combinations of things as well, mixed up some of the things. And then as part of this project, there was a musician working as well, and he was composing some music around about the islands. And we ended up attending things like the agricultural show and local festivals, and created like opportunities for people to get involved. But he did this amazing thing where he linked vegetables up to this app within his iPad, and so people could play musical vegetables. And people came along, the kids came along, it was really good fun. And then while they were there, they could I had this idea to create graffiti aprons. So create aprons that we could maybe wear at a harvest festival, but that people could write on, and then they would be embroidered afterwards. So we just asked people what did they think was special about Uist. So it was about a celebration of the place. And people wrote all sorts of things. Like as much water as land was written, beautiful things. People wrote in Gaelic as well. It was really lovely. And the aprons were taken around to different groups, whoever we sort of came across. And then they were embroidered with the threads. So, and what was lovely was because the threads were naturally dyed, all the colors sort of worked together. So it often didn't matter if people chose, it didn't really matter what color you picked up, because they were of a range of tones that sort of worked together. And this is just one of the aprons in the polycrub. And then we also did tea towels and worked with kids groups, and they wrote on the tea towels with these water soluble pens. And then sewing groups on the island got involved stitching them, and the children did some brilliant stitching as well. And they were amazed. It was amazed how much they were up for it. So yeah, so it was just lovely, the things that people had written, or there was little drawings. Some of the kids had done drawings as well. This is one of the younger children's drawings, but they're just really beautiful. And also I stitched some of them while I was there, and then stitching groups got involved, and some of the children got involved as well. I also got a tablecloth digitally printed with a map of the islands. And then I screen printed on top. Duncan, the sound artist, had created these sound walks in certain areas, and so they were highlighted on the tablecloth but I screen printed them with things like it was dyes made up from food waste. And then we had a ceilidh, which was sort of a celebration, really, but it was amazing. There'd been so many things going on all summer. Not a lot of them I wasn't involved in, but like allotment days, and like different drawing workshops, and a lot of things celebrating sort of making all around the island. And then we displayed, the tablecloths were used at the event, and the aprons as well. And then some of the other work we did was some work with a sort of after school club, and just this idea of, when you look at the image of the map of the islands, it looks like nobody lives there. So the kids came up with this idea that they would draw their houses and where they live. So basically the kids drew their houses, and then, through Photoshop, I put them onto, the map. And we created 2 other tablecloths for that. And I mean, the drawings were absolutely beautiful. and the kids had to draw their, a map of their local, around their house, what was surrounding them. And then this tablecloth was then taken into another school with younger children, and they drew fish all around the sea, all around. So it's, that idea of creating something that's got a life beyond just one event, that it can be taken around to different places. So this is still being worked on, and I haven't seen it yet, but it's amazing. Like there's been a stitch group actually stitching the kids' drawings, and they've been working away at this. This is just an image of it up on the wall. Obviously, the blue bits are bits that haven't been stitched yet. But the idea is that they just keep going as long as they want to on this, and that it can be used along with the other tablecloths for for events and for anything that goes on the island. And then this is sort of coming to the end now, but I've been thinking a lot about sustainability, and we talk a lot about sustainability, but one of the things I've been reading about is like people talk a lot now about abundance. So rather than thinking of things in deficit, like what's wrong or what we don't have, actually thinking about what we do have and making the most of resources that we do have. And it's quite a nice way to think about it, and particularly for us as textile people and as makers, you have hordes and hordes of stuff, like I keep thinking, do I really need to buy any more materials, or do I really need to, I suppose thinking more about like how much I make, what happens afterwards, and what I make it from. Oh, I don't know why that's done that. Oh, there. So one of the things that happened while I was in Uist was I connected up with there's a distillery on Uist, and we used, someone said, oh, why don't you try dyeing with the distillery waste? So they would leave like a compost bin outside, and people on the island were using it for their allotments or compost bins or whatever. So I started experimenting with dyeing that while I was there. I suppose it was a sort of spin-off of the project, but then I've joined a group in Glasgow, not in Glasgow, in Scotland. It's called Closing the Loop, and it's a group of artists who are interested in sustainability or in looking at materials and material use, and we decided that we would have an exhibition together. So I was working towards that. So I started experimenting with the dyes, and these are some of the colors that I got, and it was amazing. You got this beautiful golden color from the I think it was mainly the juniper berries that are within the dyes, or within the waste. So I've been doing a lot of experiments, and this is something that's sort of ongoing. Before this exhibition, which was called Matter, I wanted to create something that I had this idea to embroider the word abundance, and actually just people were working in a lot of different materials, and like to start off, I'd started experimenting with plastics and recycling. I was recycling COVID waste, and then I just decided that actually I don't really want to work in plastic, and I don't really want to be melting plastic, and I thought, well, maybe what I need to do is, think about what natural materials I can actually work with. So I decided to embroider the word abundance, but I embroider it in onto Uist wool, so keep all the materials very local to the island, and also maybe think about something that could be biodegradable afterwards. So a piece of work that maybe when it's had its life, it could go back into my compost heap or whatever. But then I started also working, I did a course online which is about design with food waste, and I started finding recipes for things, like actually making things from the waste. You mix up, it's things like glycerine and potato starch and different, you can actually make materials. So I was trying out different experiments, which tied in really well with this exhibition, because it was a very experimental exhibition that was really about about exploring materials and pushing materials to its limit. So I ended up, it was really simple. What I ended up making was, I ended up knitting a piece of work and then embroidering the word abundance in the gold threads on there. And I suppose it was more of a sort of just a word to get people thinking about things and to think about things slightly differently. And then I'm going to continue this work. I'm trying out, I've really become quite interested in just exploring other materials, and I don't know where it's going to go, or whether it'll have more of a textile aspect to it in the future, or whether it'll just be something that I'm experimenting with. But I think it's quite interesting to start, or even just to challenge myself with different materials, because we're so used to just picking up the same materials all the time. So it's been quite interesting to do that, and also being part of this group. I suppose a bit like you being part of Textile Network, you actually, it sort of feeds into your work in different ways, and it can really, just encourage you to experiment and do more. So this is just an image of there was a table within the exhibition that had everybody's experiments, and it was so interesting to see what people had done and the way they'd worked, and what they created as a result of sort of it started during lockdown. They started sending each other scrap materials, so having materials left over and then sending them in a box to someone else, and then they experimented with the box of materials that arrived, and it might be something they'd never used before, but yeah, quite an interesting way of working. So yeah, that was just a little snapshot of what's been happening, a few community projects, and also where I'm at the minute. But as I said, I'm working at the art school at the minute, so it's sometimes quite hard to find time to make. But I just about to try and find to apply for some funding to maybe develop some of this work, on a more abundant theme, and around sustainability, and maybe using more natural materials. So we'll see where that goes. But thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Deirdre. That's amazing. Oh my gosh.
Oh God, sorry, I've probably gone over time as well. Sorry.
No, no. We could listen to you all night long. I know that for sure. I'm sure there's probably several people have questions to ask, and you're more than welcome to unmute yourselves and just ask a question. We've some lovely comments coming in there, Deirdre. Just to say that Fina, I should have introduced you earlier. Fina is our chairman, by the way.
Okay.
And she said, a wonderful night. Thank you so much for opening us up to many new and creative ways to bring ecology, community, sustainability, and the world of textiles together. Look forward to following your ongoing story. Many thanks. It's a lovely note and description of your work, actually.
Yeah, that's great. I'll have to capture that. That's great.
Yeah. Ashley, really fantastic to see your work and process. Really, really inspiring. And everyone else is saying thank you, Deirdre. That's really great. And Kim is saying wonderful. Makes me think of some of Agnes Varda's last work.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'll have a look.
Yeah. I don't know who Agnes Varda is myself either. But I wonder, Deirdre, can I ask you? I know you're teaching in the product design course.
Yeah.
So will you be bringing your sustainability thoughts into that while you're teaching or encouraging those young kids?
Yes, and the course I'm teaching on is so interesting. I mean, I had been doing a little bit. I'd been brought in as a visiting lecturer, just odd days here and there, and then this opportunity came up to do, it's a maternity cover for someone, but the girl that I'm actually covering for, it's a team of people that work together, but her role is materials and sustainability. So but the course is so interesting. It's a lot of the students end up it's not product design in a traditional sense, like I suppose it would have been in the past. So the students are working on a lot of the course is very aligned to social sciences. So often the students are working on projects that are basically about making the world better. They might be coming up with either objects that help or artifacts, but they also often design like systems or ways of doing things. So the graduates go into all sorts of fields in the world, and they do a lot of futures thinking. So they'll be thinking about designing for the future. Or today we had they have a day each year where I wish I had it when I was at college, where they invite in experts from outside, and the students present their work to the experts, and then the experts help them or discuss their work with them. So I was doing that today, and the subjects were everything from more sustainable fashion to repair, to someone doing a project on diabetes, trying to design something new for diabetes, someone else working with animal extinction, trying to come up with ways of educating people about, just amazing sort of like a wide range of projects. So it's so interesting, and I think it's really feeding into my work and the way I work. And at the beginning, I had total imposter syndrome because, I'm not a product designer, and the lady who basically got me in to do the work, she said, just do what you do, really. And I've settled in now, and I've realized that I have a lot I can offer, and it's a team of us that are working on it. So having somebody in from more of an art background or, textile background is part of the teamwork. So but they do all sorts of projects, but it's really interesting. And I'm sort of halfway through now, so I'm a bit more settled at the beginning. But also the laugh of it is the first time I've had like a sort of regular job, I think probably ever. And even when I was teaching before, it was always very freelance sort of, and I've got my own desk and a lanyard, and and it all feels very alien compared to my usual, but it's so interesting. And so some of actually, if you look up, it's called product design innovation, or I can send you a link, but the students' work is really interesting. Often they put up graduates' work, and it crosses over all areas. So yeah.
Oh, they're so lucky to have you, Deirdre. I can see
thank you.
Permanent job. You have a permanent job coming up there, permanent position for Deirdre. Because and the reason I say that really genuinely is because you think so openly, and you're never tunnel visioned. You hook into so many different areas of thought. I can imagine that's just all, and you feeding into what they are thinking and allowing them to think differently. And I can imagine the whole thing being a lovely kind of symbiotic, is that what it is called, relationship there between you and the students?
Yeah, it's so interesting, and you sort of and they're so clever, and I think I've realized that I've actually missed that because I hadn't taught art school students. And the great thing is you go in and they're already creative and talented, and I think sometimes working with communities, if you do a lot of it, it can be quite hard going sometimes, because you're going out to a different group each time and you're not quite sure how they're going to receive what you're going to do, and there's something really reassuring about going into that creative environment. And actually just the students are already creative, so often you don't need to do very much to get them to to work through ideas, or because they're already talented and creative. So it gives you a bit of a buzz.
Amazing. Lovely note there from Anne. I think, my goodness, your community immersion is still so wonderful. I will always love the way you approach your work. And that's from Anne Kiley. And
hello, Anne.
You did a collaboration with Anne.
Yeah.
Right. Which piece did you do?
So
and you there if you
Hi Deirdre, delighted to hear you speak again. My goodness, you hardly took a breath.
Oh God, blah blah blah.
No, you're just wonderful. You're so enthusiastic, and your ideas, and they're so appropriate to all the different communities. I just fantastic. I said, God, it's great.
And can I ask you to remember the collaboration that you and Deirdre did?
Yeah, we did we worked on that exhibition called Souvenirs, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you were doing those wonderful. You just went out and spoke to so many people, and you just did so much fine work. And then you asked me just to kind of I think I just got involved in the Cove area itself, and who visited Cove and this, that, and the other. And it was just.
And we made those. You made those lovely deck chairs.
Yeah.
With little bits of Cove history.
Yeah.
Even
things like I like people I don't know like a local pub with a donkey called the Donkey's Ears or something like that.
Yes.
And even something silly like that. But it was and tiles from the bank and things like that. But but your work is just divine. Yeah, it's so delicate and fine. Yeah, I love it.
Oh, do you know, it's funny. I feel like I don't know if any of you feel this, but I just feel, I look back at some work that I did like years ago, and I just go, oh, I wonder, could I still do that fine embroidery? Because like definitely my eyesight has changed, and you know, I need the specs for everything, and also I think the patience has maybe changed a little bit as well. So you know, I want some time to try and get back into that, because I sometimes look back at work that I did years ago and I just think, God, I don't know if I could do that again, you know. So particularly very fine embroidery. So but you know, I'm sure I could, but maybe I think it's maybe more the patience has gone rather than the ability. But I definitely think the eyesight has made a big difference. And you know, sometimes I find it so frustrating, you know, having to wear glasses and find the glasses and all that sort of stuff. I can see you nodding, somebody nodding in the different distance there, Anne.
It's me, yeah. I have to wear the glasses for the screen at the moment, yeah. But I have of course, I have to have the glasses attached to me. Yeah.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd be spending my whole day looking for them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. No, but that's really nice.
Sorry, Deirdre. I know we're running short of time. One thing we forgot to mention, and I forgot to mention actually, is your incredible sense of humor. Now I know maybe it didn't come across in what all the different many projects that you presented tonight, but that is one very, very strong aspect of your work that I remember very clearly. Remember the little cow, the little plastic cow with his golden jumper on her, and like that. And you were in this wonderful exhibition called Smile, and you know, I honestly feel that
and the fish auction.
Yes,
the fish auction, Jeannie Jacks, we bought so much fish. Yeah.
And here's one of the man. This is a fish from that.
I have got them upstairs. Yeah.
And this was, I have a feeling this particular fish was made by Karen Kempf, and actually very much in keeping with what you were talking about tonight, Deirdre. It's completely recycled. It's all shredded yarns, you know.
Yes, yeah.
And added, and her lovely fluffy tail. And I think this is another piece from the souvenir show as well. And this is a hat, a sailor's hat with is this a tansy flower?
Yeah. Because I'd spoken to someone who was talking about the houses up on the hill in Cove, and it used to be the sort of like the captains of the ships lived in those houses, but apparently there was a whole hill of, I think it was of tansies around that area. There was just tansies growing wild, so it was connected with that. Because when I was in Cove, I realized that all the souvenirs were really miserable. They were all like to do with the Titanic and things like that, or people, you know, drowning, or, you know. So I decided I would make some cheerful souvenirs that actually told the proper story of the place. So it's interesting you say that about humor, because, you know, I've been thinking about that recently, and thinking about the most recent projects I've done, and they've actually been a bit more serious rather than, you know, because normally I would look for, you know, like little odd stories related to social history and try and bring out those things. And that's a reminder. I need to get that back, actually. But I suppose yes, sorry, go on.
Sorry, hi there. I just wanted to ask something about one of your experiments in natural dyes. Like, I find it very fascinating, because myself, I'm also interested in, you know, doing natural dyeing more, and like with whole sustainability and biodegradable. And you were mentioning a course in London, what was
it's called now see if I get it right, Ceres, CERES. You'll find them. I don't know if you're on Instagram, but it's, I could maybe see if I can find and put it in the chat, but they're fantastic. It costs about, you can do a 2-day course, which I think was about £350, and it's in Brixton in London, and it was amazing, absolutely amazing. The two girls that teach it have been excuse me, they've been sorry, just take a drink of water.
I find it so fascinating that, you know, for screen printing you would use natural dyes. I'm just like, because I'm doing it now, screen printing, but not with natural, you know. So
but it's actually quite straightforward, though. It was interesting. When I did the course, I got really strong colours when I was in London, and then I did exactly the same thing in Glasgow and got different colours, and I think it's to do with the water. Someone had said to me the amount of minerals in the water, like Glasgow water would be, I would say, a lot better and fresher than London water.
Okay.
But it was very hard for me to get the same colors again. So it's sort of interesting. But the process is really quite straightforward. It's, I mean, I suppose with natural dyes, when you're dyeing yarn and things, you have like bigger vats of water and plants and stuff, whereas you make a much more concentrated dye with plants for screen printing. And then there's this powder, which is called Indalca. And you add the sort of, I suppose it's like pigmented dye, but a lot more, you know, like you would boil up plants with very little water over a really slow pace of time, and then use that liquid to add to this powder, and it makes it sort of gel, and then that's what you screen print over. And then the process,
You're not using medium at all, textile medium.
well, the medium is the Indalca, this Indalca powder, so that's what you would use. And then you screen print it, obviously, and then steam it. So you steam it for 45 minutes afterwards. And I mean, some of the colors that they were getting, you should have a look at their website or their Instagram to see. And you do if you do the course, this 2-day course you can do, and it's very technical. You're basically, well, not technical, but you're basically printing stripes. And then the second day you do something that you want to do that's a bit more adventurous yourself. But I ended up just keeping going with stripes. And then, but there's so many variables on it, you know, like whether you, I'm sort of getting very technical now, but you know, you can screen print different things over the top to change the color. But then they also do a 3-day course, which is a bit more advanced. So it's worth looking at. And I would say it's worth every penny, you know. I mean, I just went down, paid for a hotel, stayed there and did it over 2 days, and it was brilliant, really good. So
thank you very much. No, I mean, you covered so many different projects. I was like taking notes really fast.
Oh,
it's amazing, like totally.
Yeah.
Can I just say there, Rota, actually, we're very, very lucky that Deirdre has agreed to allow us to record her tonight. So we'll be able to put that up on our, be able to put the whole talk up on our YouTube channel at some stage when we sort that. So
thank you so much. Yeah, great.
Thank you very much for that, Deirdre. That was generous of you to allow that.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. And if there's anything, you know, that you want to, you can email me or whatever, if there's anything that you want to ask or, So.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's fantastic, Deirdre. If there's anyone else who has any questions for Deirdre, we might let you go. Another lovely note from Imelda. Thank you, Deirdre, for a wonderful talk on a wide range of topics. You've given us great inspirational ideas for extending projects. So.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Oh, it's been so nice. It's been so good, and also to reconnect with. I'll have to get back over to Cork.
Yeah, definitely. The series still does the residencies, you know.
I know. I should try. I'd love to come back again. Yeah. I really enjoyed it.
It's still there, so they're still doing that. So yeah, think about it, Deirdre. We'd love to maybe do a few classes with you or something, you know.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
We'll have to think about that. So okay, we've run madly over time, so apologies to you and to everybody for that. But as you say, it's great to catch up. We better let you go.
Okay.
All right.
And lovely to see you all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.